No, I think it's Dr. Megan Woods. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr.
Dr.
Speaker.
Megan Woods.
Thank you, Mr. Mallard. It's my pleasure to take a call on this bill. I think as one of the few members in this House that lists a student loan on her pecuniary interests, I'd actually like to talk about the generational politics of student support. In the late 1980s and the late 1990s, something happened for a generation of young New Zealanders, and myself and a number of my colleagues on this side of this House had their politics born at this time. My colleagues Andrew Little and Grant Robertson first spoke to your predecessor, Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Dr. Lockwood Smith, down megaphones on university campuses in New Zealand in the late 1990s. And it was around this very issue of paying for our education and how we were going to fund that. It is fair to say that for politicians of my generation on this side of the House, that student loans and student politics has been a defining factor for us. And what we have in this Student Loan Scheme Amendment Bill number 3, no, it wasn't, Mr. Mallard. I could talk about the free education that your generation got, a nice part of our history. But Mr. Mallard will have the right of rebuttal in his speech when he comes to that. But one of the things that we have to think very carefully about is what is actually being done in this piece of legislation. And this piece of legislation that we have before us is nothing but a gimmick. It is a headline-grabbing gimmick from a national party who wants to appear hard on criminals. Only in this case, those criminals are student loan borrowers who might be trying to sneak back into their country through the secret passage of airport terminals, and they're going to set up very good border security. Get the beagles out, those criminals might be trying to sneak back in. So let's actually have a look at the kind of advice that the former minister got in regard to this measure when he suggested it as one of his big flagship items in Budget 2013. Well, he was told that the police had advised him that very little could be achieved without photos in the crowded area of airports. It would be difficult and it would be time-consuming. So the very people that are going to be called on to monitor this legislation, to enforce this legislation, told the minister who introduced it that it was going to be difficult to do. The officials went on to tell the minister that the proposal would have cost implications for the courts, and while the number of expected arrest warrants is low and the exact number is unknown, the costs to the courts have not been estimated. The full cost of doing this has not even been calculated. Its sole purpose was to create a big headline about how something big was going to be done to create what is, in the grand scheme of the student loan scheme, a minor problem. Should student loan borrowers who are living overseas be making their repayments? Absolutely. We are not disputing that. But what we are saying is this is a big gimmicky stick where actually what we could have is far more effective measures to achieve the desired outcome of making it easier for overseas-based borrowers to make their repayments. Now, I will give some credit to this government. I think this government has put in place several measures to make the repayment of student loans for those overseas much more simple. I've talked to numerous of my friends who have student loans who live overseas who are no longer having to try and figure out how through a bank to do a bank transfer. There are much more seamless and integrated ways to do this, and this is to be congratulated. But then on the other hand, this government has made it much harder for student loan borrowers who are living overseas. They have reduced the repayment holiday for those who are going out to seek their adventure in the world, to gain the experience that we know will make New Zealand a great place. That experience is to be celebrated, but by truncating the amount of time you can be overseas without making repayments, we are restricting the opportunities of so many of our young people. And this is something that we should not be doing. This is not to the benefit of us as a country. This is not what we envision when we think about what our education system can deliver for our 21st century New Zealand. It is just not on. Now, over the last few months, I have been had a reasonably steady stream of emails from student loan borrowers who are living overseas, who now face really real consequences to their lives. I implore this government to put in place some more carrot to make it possible for these people. Sometimes life intervenes and people have got themselves into a predicament where they now are so far behind in their student loan repayments. They live overseas and the prospect of coming forward is just too daunting. It's not that they don't want to start making their repayments. They are happy to start making repayments and making them regularly. But what is absolutely frightening them is the prospect of the size of the back payment they may have to stump up with. Some of these people are in their late 30s and early 40s now, if they're like me and started university in the very first years of the student loan scheme. They've bought a house, they've gone on with their life, and they're living in fear that there's security. They're going to have to sell their houses in order to make these repayments. Why can we not have some period of amnesty where people can come forward, they can start their repayment schedule, but they aren't going to have to, they're not going to have to rip apart the fabric of their life in order for them to get their house in order, as it was. And I urge the Minister to think about this, and for the members opposite to think about this, that we're not going to destroy the lives of New Zealanders who are living overseas. Or we're not going to make New Zealanders living overseas just make a decision, well, I'm just not going to ever go back to New Zealand. That's it, I can't. That we're just not going to darken the doors again because it's just too difficult. Let's actually make it more easy. Let's take away the difficulty for these people if to put everything in place. We know that this works. When Labor was in power, they introduced an amnesty around student loans borrowers when Dr. Cullen was the Minister of Finance, and it was very successful. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people came forward, and we actually did see real results. Why is it that we wouldn't think about a measure such as this in relation to this? Because, Mr. Speaker, members of my generation face a very different prospect for their future than their predecessors, than people who have gone before them. Another measure, not only is the big headline arrest them at the border that was introduced in this, but there was measures to speed up the repayments from compliant overseas-based borrowers. Now, one of the important facts to remember is that the rates for student loan borrowers are based on the level of their loan and not their income. So if you've gone to live overseas, and you are working as a waitress, your repayments are going to be the same as if you were a lawyer. This is not a repayment schedule that is based on income. This is not a progressive repayment schedule. It's based on the balance of your loan. Now, this is going to be increased. These repayments are going to be increased through this piece of legislation. An even more regressive system is going to be put in place. It's going to make it even more difficult for overseas borrowers and run the risk of more people getting in the situation where it is simply too difficult and they are not compliant with their repayments. It is from a government who does not believe in fairness. It is from a government that doesn't believe in equality and doesn't believe in giving young New Zealanders every chance to get ahead. And that, Mr. Speaker, is what we need to see. I would like to see so many changes to this legislation. Labor is opposing this legislation, but we know that it will make its way to Senate committee. And I implore members opposite to actually have an open mind. Think about what this is doing to a generation of New Zealanders, because it is not fair and it is not equitable. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Holly Walker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Well, it's been another budget back in May, and now we have in front of us in the House